Welcome. I'm Aaron Thibault. If you're in the right place, I want to make sure. I'm VP of Product Development and an executive producer at Gearbox Software. I oversee the Borderlands franchise. I also oversee all development, essentially GM of the studio. Everyone that's making games reports up to me. My boss is Randy Pitchford, CEO of the studio and founder. My second boss is Stephen Ball, CFO, another founder. They're the two owners of the studio who are still in and making games at Gearbox. And my third boss is the studio. I make sure that I fulfill whatever they need first and foremost. I also teach. I'm a professor at Baylor University, where I teach capstone and engineering. I like working with kind of, in that context, really small teams of students. I have 7 this semester, which is different from the close to 300 I have internally at Gearbox, plus all the external people that we have close relationships with at Gearbox. So it's kind of refreshing to do that. And today, I'm doing a little bit different format from what I've done in past years, if you've ever heard me talk before. Usually I rely heavily on memes and pictures and go more for entertainment value and giving you food you didn't ask for. This year, what I want to do more is actually cut through the bullshit a bit and get more into what we're looking for anyway, and what people I talk to in production around the industry are looking for in their producers, and how to move kind of crawl, walk, run style from getting your foot in, which many of you probably already have. Quick survey, who in here already is a producer in some kind of production capacity, a studio? Awesome. And who here is kind of looking to go that route, or making a lateral move or something like that? Cool. Students, a few? Wow. First of all, I'm flattered that so many of you who are already producers in the industry decided to come to this talk when there's so many other cool sounding talks out there. And congrats to those of you who are students or looking to get into the industry, seeking out opportunities like this to hear a little bit from people who have been doing it a while. I've been in games now going on 20 years. I was in music before that. I was in rap promotions and production. I may give a couple stories there. And I started at Origin Systems when we were coming out of the beta on Ultima Online, 97. When I started day one out of music was as a audio intern. And about 3 weeks later, I started helping direct cinematics. Was there a question? I heard something corner of my eye, or corner of my ear. And we moved from there into doing some help third-party style with other studios around the EA system. Got to do things like go up to Dallas and work with the American McGee's Alice team, and work with James Combat Simulations, where Andy Hollis had his group at Origin. We've got actually a couple of other old school Origin people in the audience right now that I can see, so thanks for being here. So really for me, what it boils down to is, as a producer, what I'm trying to do all the time is to imagine the very, very best possible outcome that I can and do everything in my power to go after it. And it doesn't matter where you are in the organization, if you are just getting your foot in the door, if you're the EP on a project, if you're a dev director, it really doesn't matter. This, I hope, is your goal all the time. You want to help your team achieve the best possible success. You're not just trying to kind of cover your ass or do the one thing that you got hired to do, or make sure that your next performance review, whatever your KPIs or metrics are for the the thing that you're going to be evaluated on, that you're just focused on that. Really, the bigger goal is entertaining our customers and finding ways to manifest the best possible things. That's what makes this really not just a tolerable thing to do for me, but something that I'm passionate about. And I know that there are many others who are passionate about production as well. However, we don't really have this kind of discipline of production. There aren't that many schools outside of management that really discuss what you do as a producer or a dev director. It's something that most of us have just gained experience from being on the ground doing it. And many of us came from other disciplines as well. So these are just my opinions, right? These are just things that I've seen in my experience and anecdotes from friends of mine who are in the industry. But what I want is to give you work to do. Okay, so hopefully you brought pen and paper, or we'll get access to this later, because actually what I want is for all of you to, as we're going through this presentation, think of what examples you would use to describe the things that we're going to talk about, what pictures that you would use to quickly send a message about those things, and how you would do this presentation yourself. I'd love all of you, when you get home, to create this presentation for yourselves and do it. So steal it and do something cool with it. We're going to start out, before we get into like how do you do the best possible, most awesome job as a producer EP in the industry. And really, we're gonna stop a little short of the EP side. We're not going to go deep into business. I know some of that was already talked about this morning about the economics of the industry. I think in an hour we don't really have time to go fully into the executive producer side of things. But I'll give it probably a few examples, and if you have any questions when we have time, please ask them. So coaching, opportunities for improvement. What I've done is I've pulled some actual coaching statements from performance reviews that I've given over the last 8-9 years at Gearbox, and thinking about some of the coaching moments that I've had before Gearbox, to start with some mistakes that we see with junior producers, and with all producers. So the first one is, and I drive this one home all the time, please don't be afraid to say that you don't know something, because it's when you never say you don't know, if you are working with a team and you find yourself constantly feeling the need to answer questions as though you really know the answer and you don't, you erode trust with the team, and when what you should be doing is everything you can to build trust, because you need to use that credibility. You might have to cash it in later. And so the economics of credibility and trust are way more important than being the person who always has the answer. It's cool if you have the answer, but it's better if you, like everyone else, are showing that you're just a human in the team. Some mistakes junior producers make have to do with opinions. The first one is, which may be a surprise to some of you, I feel a lot of people in production roles in the industry feel they shouldn't give their opinion, even if they feel they have a valid basis for their opinion. They don't speak up about it. And I think this stems from, and from those I've talked to when I've coached them, it stems from feeling not empowered. So if you are in a role where you don't feel empowered to speak up about things that maybe you don't think are just in your purview, I think that you should address that with your lead, or maybe just by revisiting who you are and what you're doing in your role in the industry. I remember a time, actually when I was at Origin, and we were working on Ultima Online 2, and I felt like there wasn't enough information going around the studio about what was happening with the title, and I felt like there wasn't enough leadership on that project amongst all the leads. There's some people who are awesome. They were, especially the sort of the vision of what the project was going to be. But when the rubber really hit the road, from my perspective anyway, I wasn't getting enough information. And I wished, in retrospect, after that project was shut down, that I had gone to that senior producer and had a talk with him. He quickly left to go run another studio, but I realized later why my boss, who was the head of we were in this team called the RAVE group, stood for Radical Audiovisual Experience. We were responsible for cinematics and storytelling and did technical animation and art and all the audio for our games. Why he stuck a potato in that person's monitor and left it there for 4 months, not realizing that guy was on the way out the door. It was kind of his passive-aggressive stance to speaking up when he didn't feel empowered. I understood what that was later. It was funny at the time that there was a potato in the guy's monitor, though. So don't be the person who puts a potato in a monitor, is my point. This one is the more common one that you hear. Offering an opinion when unqualified. Look, here's the thing. If you're in a team, if you're in a bigger team especially, and that team has hired designers to come into design roles on your team, please don't usurp the authority and responsibility of those designers on your teams by constantly offering design opinions. I love that you have design opinions. If you have them and you're offering them, just make sure that you're helping the team use their time most wisely and boosting the cred of the people around you by giving them the responsibility of having and pushing forward those opinions. I actually, every year I have at least one moment where I have to coach a new producer on this one. And then not asking others. So this goes hand in hand, obviously, with not speaking up or not feeling empowered, but not asking others for their opinion, not asking enough questions, not being curious enough. What I'm looking for, really, especially with newer producers, are people who are really curious. It becomes very helpful when you are uncovering the unknowns in your designs to have curious people around you, especially producers who are responsible for understanding the scope of work that is being proposed. And so when you don't ask a lot of questions and people for their opinions about the validity of things, the goodness of things, how deep problems are going to be in things, then you're not helping your team as much as you could. Self-control. Once in a while, and this goes for all team members, but it really hurts me when I see it from someone who's in production. Your team's looking to you to be a leader, to be someone who sets the tone for adult behavior and professionalism in the team. Usually, we want that of all members of our teams, but my discipline now is in production, so I can't control per se or give that same message to all other disciplines. I'll say if you're in production, I'm hoping that you are consciously practicing self-control. There's a lot of ways to do that. We're not going to go into kind of all methods for all things here. I will ask you that you practice this. This is an obvious one. However, a lot of times we see information being disseminated through electronic means that needs to be given face-to-face. Anytime you coach somebody, I hope that is face-to-face. Never coach anybody over email or on a phone call. It can wait. Unless it's disastrous, it can wait until you're face-to-face. Also, great news is best delivered face-to-face. It's way more impactful, and you can also use it as a moment to coach in a positive direction, not just away from a negative direction. There's kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't things. There are a lot of these gotchas. So rather than say it's a failure to make a decision before you have all the information, I could have said that. But instead what I'll say is the failure is not recognizing what the best alternative is. You have to make decisions with incomplete information. It's part of your job. You're going to try to uncover all the information you can, but really, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions with incomplete information. So you might favor making a decision towards something that you can easily recover from. That's always a good direction to go if you have the time to recover. Taking too long to make a decision, well, there are some that can stand to wait, right? There are some things that are painful to make bad decisions with, whether it's hiring the wrong person or making some feature decision to do a back-of-the-box check for your product as opposed to ensuring that your team can really deliver on that thing that you're discussing. So make sure that you're weighing the pros and cons across competitive decisions. So along the same lines of professionalism that we were talking about before, the baseline that you set is really important, and you have to be intentional about it. You can't just be, hey, it's just me, and I'm on the team, and people have to accept me for who I am. Fuck that as a producer, okay? I want you to be who you are, and I want you to be comfortable in your own skin, but you are establishing a baseline, and everything that you do that deviates away from that baseline is going to be hugely impactful, especially as your teams grow. So you have to be intentional about what that baseline is, okay? If you come in and you kind of have this schizo behavior because you're passionate about a lot of things and you're all over the map, okay, you might be passionate and you'll be around as an, say, assistant or associate producer for a while, but you're not going to be in a leadership capacity with that sort of behavior. And I don't see anybody in here who strikes me that way, but I've seen it and had to coach people out of companies I've been at as a result of it. Where their baseline in is really important, and you have to be reliable in that way. Now here's the thing though, because you've established this baseline, then you can be intentional about when you use emotion. There are times when I want to see you use maybe a lot of emotion in order to be super impactful on the things that really matter for your teams. You guys know about Maslow's hierarchy of needs? Yeah, you've heard about this a lot of times. You've probably heard other talks about it, studied it in school, whatever. It's funny how often this really truly comes up in a studio environment, whether it's something as simple as food, or the AC isn't working, or the heater's not working. Whatever it is, you have to decide how you're going to escalate your response to things that actually directly impact that foundation of what people need. And once you've established a calm baseline, when you see things that might impact your teams physiologically, psychologically, things that impact their safety, you know, if you hear about, hey, cars are getting broken into in the parking lot, and you know, you're in an environment where you might have street lamps that are going out, whatever. You have to be the one to care about the team enough to escalate in a way that others understand how much of a problem those things are. And as a producer, this is really squarely in line with things you have to care about. So, professionalism, you know, we're in games. I understand we're not in a corporate environment. It's cool, but I'll say, I'll give another origin example. We had this stupid, terrible thing we used to do, which was a mandatory happy hour. And it started when the company was small, and it continued when the company got big. And I saw 2 different marriages get wrecked over the fact that we had this forced socialized thing happening. You know, you have to be really, really mindful of how long do you want to be in the industry and what kind of reputation do you want to have and leave behind. So things like dating coworkers, whatever your company policy is cool. Keep in mind though, once you start having those relationships grow in the office environment through the stress that you're probably going to experience on the kind of projects that we see all across the industry these days, you know, that can really impact things in the game and in your life. And I don't want you to go through the kind of things that I saw in those days that we had 20 years ago. It's not okay to say offensive things. Like, it's not okay to, I don't want us to have to be too PC in the industry. I curse a lot. I use a lot of references that people would, you know, that I wouldn't use maybe at home with my mom, or, you know, or with my family at home. At the same time, though, you have to be really aware of who your coworkers are, and you want to boost them up and make them feel great. Likewise, I also want you to keep in mind, and I'll only